Random thoughts. In this video, I'm going to read part of Douglas Jardine's book, The Mad Mullah of Somaliland. This is a book that was published, of course, in early 1920s, and it's a book about Mohammed Abdullah Hassan. Now, Douglas Jardine was a colonial administrator from 1916 to 1921 in, of course, British Somaliland. Now, in this part, he tells us about of course, he's talking about the aftermath of the first expedition that happened against Mohammed Abdullah Hassan. This is 1900. Now, this expedition, the Ethiopians were expected to join them. In fact, the expedition had been proposed by Menelik, who had suggested that the Ethiopians, or the Abyssinians, as they were called then, were going to join the British in Somaliland and then to fight Mohammed Abdullah Hassan. The Abyssinians, of course, were trying to protect the Ogaden region, and this is where the father of Mohammed Abdullah Hassan came from. So they were interested in safeguarding or protecting that region. Now, it seems like when the day of fighting arrived, the Abyssinians did not commit themselves enough, or they did not do much. That's what it seems was happening. And then after that, for some weird reasons, the British decides to lie to them. And we are going to see that. He says, this is Douglas Jardine, he says, it is unnecessary to waste much time or paper on the Abyssinian expedition, which was intended to cooperate with our levy. So seems like they were disappointed. The British were disappointed about the contribution of the Abyssinians. He continued to say, it may be said that they achieved their primary object. For their presence in the field, they blocked the western avenue of escape against the Mullah. So it seems like the Abyssinians just stood or guarded their border. They did not do much, or they did not decide to do much. But it was extremely fortunate that they never encountered the enemy. The force originally consisted of some 10,000 men with but 1 month's supplies, but they were immediately joined by thousands of others who desired to profit from any loot that might offer, so that the commissariat soon found themselves in grave difficulty. So he's disappointed, but at the same time he says it is better they did not join the battle because it was not going to work for them. For one, their supplies were not enough. They had very little supplies, and then more people joined them, which meant that they did not have enough to sustain themselves. So them not joining the war or the battle at this point seems like was a wise thing on their side, because things would have gone terribly wrong for them. He continues to say, there was only one casualty, a rival wound which occurred in characteristically Gilbertian circumstances. 2 Abyssinian soldiers captured 12 suspect unarmed Somalis. While on their way back to the camp, one of the 2 soldiers left the party for a few moments. The prisoner, finding themselves under charge of only 1 man, decided to escape. The absent soldier, hearing cries for help from his comrade, fired from a distance at the running Somalis, but instead of hitting the prisoners he had hoped to do, he shot his brother warrior some 50 yards behind through the abdomen. So they got very few casualties, and one of those is this one, that they managed to capture some unarmed Somalis, and 2 soldiers were guarding them, and then one of them leaves the other to guard them, and these unarmed Somali, we can say now prisoners, realize that they had a chance and they decide to run, and while they are running, the other soldier who had left comes back and he's trying to shoot at the running, of course, prisoners. He ends up shooting his colleague, and that's how they ended up with a casualty like that. It was not at the battlefield. When the rations gave out, no supply were obtained from the countryside except camel meat, to which the Abyssinians, who live mainly on grain, were unaccustomed. So soon they ran out of food, but the Abyssinians seems like were not fans of eating camel meat or milk, and that became a problem. The heat in the plains was intense, and water was scarce and generally impure, being the rain washing from the surrounding country mixed with animal droppings. There was little fodder for the ponies and mules, who became more and more dilapidated as the time went on. Weakened, disheartened, and sullen, the men yearned to return to their highlands, but Gania's March in command desired them to proceed south to Webishebeli in search of loot. So they've not fought at the battlefield. The British fought by themselves. Then the Abyssinians just stood aside, and they did not get hurt, but they had very little supplies. And now, when the battle is over, of course, they don't have enough supplies, and many of them want to go back. There is no water. They are not used to eating camel and just milk. They want to go back home. But their commander, this guy, Ganias March, had his own plans. He wanted them to continue further to the south, I think, to find places to loot. Major Hanbury Tracy was eventually successful in dissuading Ganias March from the perilous course, and eventually, on the receipt of false report that the mullah had been captured by our levy, the force returned to Jigjiga. So this British officer realized that the Ethiopian general is so much interested in going to the south to find a place to loot, of course, in pretense that he's going to look for Mohammed Abdullah Hassan. And he decides to lie to him. He tells him, you know what, Mohammed Abdullah Hassan has been captured by our soldiers. So there is no longer any need for you to go south or for you to move any further from here. And it's only after that that he decides to go back to Jigjiga. They lied to him, maybe to save them, because they realized that these people did not have supplies. Either they lied to him or them, the Abyssinians, because they realized that these people did not have enough supplies to sustain them, or they lied to them because they realized that these people are going to complicate the operations by moving into the land that most likely was controlled by the British or the Italians. And so they decide to lie to them like you know what, the mission is over, basically. We've already captured Mohammed Abdullah Hassan, which was a lie. Now, actually, the Abyssinians believed this lie. And there is a message that then is written by Ras Makenon, which I guess is a king of the Abyssinians. Of course, the Abyssinians had many kings. And this message is written to the British, of course, thanking them for working together. And because at this point, I think he believes that Mohammed Abdullah Hassan had been captured. And this is what the message says. This is a translation. From Ras Makenon to my august friend, Major the Honorable Algamon Hanbari Tracy, and to my friend Captain Ralph Cobbold. As we now going to separate and you are returning to your country, I wish to thank you on behalf of His Majesties the Emperor Menelik II, King of Kings of Ethiopia, for the assistance and the very good services that you were kind enough to render to my troops, commanded by Guineas March, Abanabro, during time you were with the expedition in the Ogaden against the Mullah. Ganias March and all the officers were very satisfied because you were always willing to assist and help them. I hope that your presence among my troops will strengthen the good friendship that already exists between the two governments of Great Britain and Abyssinia. So that is the message that this, we can say, king of the Abyssinians write to the British. Of course, he believes the lie that Mohammed Abdullah Hassan has been captured. And now, of course, as I said, it's not very clear why the British decided to lie to the Abyssinians that Mohammed Abdullah Hassan had been captured, but could be because they pitied them and they were like, you people, if you go that way, you don't have supplies, you are not very used to this land, you are going to suffer, so let's lie to you so that you go back home. Or maybe they were like, these guys are going to complicate this war because already they have shown themselves to be not helpful, because they just came and stood by and watched us fight the mullah by ourselves. So maybe there's another reason why they lied to them. I'm not sure why they lied to them. And if you have an idea, or you have a theory why you think the British decided to lie to the Abyssinians, I'll be happy to read. I would be happy to read your comments. Those are my random thoughts.